So Yannick, please join me on the stage if you're here. And we're going to do a talk on product launches. All right. Yeah. Oh, here we go. Hey, man. How's it going?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm kicking ass, man. Well, so nice to have you. I'm gonna leave the stage, and you can share your screen, and then take it away.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Hello, everyone, as well. While I'm trying to hop over to my screen here and share, probably take a bit of time to introduce myself. My name is Yannick. I am based in Paris, and I'm super excited to be part of this conversation and part of this. There it is. Part of this talk. So let me know if you can see my screen. I'm sharing the screen right now. Can you see the screen? Can you see my presentation? I'm on Google right there. Maybe if you can just type in yes. Awesome. Okay, now you can. Awesome. While I'm going through just testing everything out, make sure everything works, can you just kind of tell me maybe which company you're at and what's your seniority level? Like, what's your position? Just so I kind of get an understanding of who's in the room. Do we have like seniors, executives, directors, juniors, just to get a feel of who's there as I'm going through the presentation. All right, we got some marketing directors, VP marketing. Okay, awesome. Senior consultants, senior associates, Matt, VP marketing. Awesome. Okay, great. Brand strategist, Tatjana, Kathy, digital marketing consultant. All right, so we got a good range of different types of people. Still all focused though in marketing. Great. Head of marketing, Janetta. Awesome. Well, great. Let me go on ahead and get going. Moving over to the next slide. So if you can see the next slide, because I'm now in full presentation mode, I just have to click back to see if we're good here. If you can see the next slide, let me know. Just type yes. Okay, perfect. All right, ready to go. So my name is Yannick. I'm American. I'm French. I'm also West African, so very multicultural background. I'm a former product marketing lead at LinkedIn based in the San Francisco Bay Area. And today I basically relocated to Paris to lead the global product marketing team in a fast growth startup. So a bit about me is that I'm a avid book reader, love to read books. So if there's any kind of interesting books out there, whether it's about business or personal growth or anything that has to do with health as well, just send them my way. I love that stuff. And I'm also a professor to speak on a variety of topics of leadership, strategy, product marketing. Topic today is product launches, right? So how do we move from product launches to predictable revenue? Now, I know we only have about 30 minutes of time, and probably we want to take about at least 5 minutes of Q&A, so I'm going to have to move through a lot of content here, but I'll make sure to give you some of these slides so you can see at a later date as well. First things first is let's define, how do we define really a product launch? And I took just to make sure we're all aligned on what we mean by that. And so I took the definition from product launch and from product plan, and basically a product launch refers to a business's planned and coordinated effort to debut a new product to the market and make that product generally available for purchase. It's also it also serves a lot of purposes outside of just kind of the product launch. It's the opportunity to get customer feedback, as well as build anticipation, as well as create momentum for an industry or for a company. And so I love stats, and even though there's this saying about 80% of stats are like not correct, they're still fun to look at. So McKinsey Consulting, who most of you might know, they've mentioned that companies would get pretty much about 25% of total revenue and profits from new launches. That's a staggering amount. So every time you launch, if you do it well, right, you have the opportunity to really accelerate growth for your business. And of course, make customers happy and gain market share and everything else, right? On the other side, there's about 75% to 95% of product launches that fail. And of course, it'll depend on your market. But I thought that number was staggering. And so feel free to also, when we share this, look at the reports from McKinsey and so on. I think it's really fascinating to see. Top reasons, really high level, why this is happening is one, businesses don't have the ability to collect and analyze the proper amount of insights for the market, to understand where the market's going, what's the right product to build for the right price and the right positioning in the market. Second thing is the inability to really appropriately allocate the right level of resources and creativity to not only create but sustain demand. And I think that sustained demand is really interesting because I'm so passionate about this topic of product launches. And a lot of times I've noticed that people are really focused on that moment, on that event of launching. But there's so much more that needs to happen before and so much more that happens after. And I think that sustain is really where a big piece of the puzzle is. The third piece is just a poor enablement of sales and customer success, especially if you're on the B2B side, to ensure high conversion rates and customer adoption. So that's really, really high level. And one of the things that, before I go into kind of giving some steps on what I've seen about the top mistakes and also the steps to really move from launches to predictable revenue, is that businesses failing with their product launches is not just small SMB, very small businesses. It's also the large organizations that also do fail on those launches. The difference is that the big organizations typically have a lot of cash in the bank, so they survive long enough to launch another time and then another time. But for smaller businesses, you fail to launch and you've allocated a lot of resources, a lot of time, and you launch it in the market and the revenue doesn't arrive, and the customers don't buy and the customers don't stay. This is a big problem. And so wanted to share a case of Sony. I don't know, maybe I might be dating myself here, maybe I'm a total geek, but I'm gonna feel free to put some questions as well in the chat box if you have any questions or comments. But Sony, for me, I think it was in 2016, they had basically written off over $3 billion in sales for their PS3 console. A couple of reasons why. They basically had built a product that was revolutionary. It was Blu-ray disc technology that was ahead of its time for Nintendo and Xbox, but it was also a lot pricier. It was a lot more expensive. And they knew that customers weren't willing to pay that much. So their strategy was, okay, we're gonna sell the console on a negative margin so that we can recoup sales on game sales. Well, as most of you or some of you might know, didn't work out quite well for a number of reasons. Well, one, a lot of game developers, first of all, were developing games for multiple consoles, for Xbox, Sony, and so on. They didn't want to specifically use that digital Blu-ray technology for Sony. So just in terms of the supply and the market, they read that wrong because the market wasn't willing to spend so much time to just build something specifically from Sony. They did have some, but not a lot. The second thing is that market was changing. So as they thought that people would start buying Blu-ray DVDs, but actually the market started shifting towards more streamlined online experiences, moving to Netflix, for example, that was starting to pick up. That was another reason they didn't read the market. And then the third one was just the economics didn't work, right? They were selling something that was that was really expensive. Customers weren't willing to pay. They wanted something simple, right? And so that was just a really interesting case of how a product launch didn't go well. The other one was Amazon Fire. Now, a lot of folks are like, Amazon had a phone? Yeah, they had a phone. They had over $170 million worth of debt really to show it. Is for similar reasons to the Sony example. They just didn't time the market well. They didn't launch the product for the right reason, and eventually it was discontinued in 2015. So most folks don't know, but you had an Amazon phone that was trying to compete head to head with Android and with Apple, and they obviously didn't cut it. And those are with big budgets. We're talking about billions of dollars, millions of dollars behind different R&D for technology and so on. However, there are a lot of companies that do get it right? So you can recognize all of these amazing brands, whether it's SaaS products, whether it's fast-moving consumer goods, whatever it is. I mean, there's tons of people that are doing it well. And obviously, Amazon does it well too. But just want to show you that you recognize some of these brands because they've done a really good job at launching over and over and over again so that everyone knows them, and as well as scaling and, of course, creating a right product. And of course, everyone knows the famous kind of Apple strategy of that international event to announce the product, release it with the pre-sales. I mean, they have this whole thing going on. Everybody knows their chess play. at this point. And a lot of people try to actually emulate that because it was great the way they released that. They also use One Piece to really get a lot of feedback in those pre-sales as well to help for the general availability and as well for collecting feedback for the following year. So I think there's one thing I really want to say is that everyone obviously in this room, I was looking over, there's some VPs, there's some directors, there's some consultants, everyone knows their stuff, right? It's very, very important to know that every single launch can help accelerate your business or slow down or really break your business, right? And so one of the things I've noticed that there's effective ways and there's less effective ways, right? There's folks that launch and kind of pray, okay, not in the really sense of praying, but in the sense that like you're kind of guessing, you're not quite sure, we'll see what happens. And then there's others that are testing, learning, and creating this what I call predictable revenue, which is a great term that Aaron Ross also coined with his book Predictable Revenue. Some are more gut feeling, emotional decisions, not a lot of cross-functional alignment, not a lot of market analysis, not a lot of ROI monitoring once it's launched. Others are a lot more effective. They're data-driven. They have customer feedback. They have cross-functional buying. There's a whole play to it, right? Now, I'll go into the details. But this notion of predictable revenue is a framework to create consistency year over year and provide business growth based on a formula. And essentially, you're predicting how much revenue the business can generate constantly over time. And so your job, or I should say our job, is to build the right product for the right reasons, assemble the right team and allocate the right resources in the right way, crunch the numbers to create a profitable experience. At the end of the day, you're launching, you want the business to be profitable so you can keep reinvesting in the business, reinvesting in the product, reinvesting in our customers. So it does need to be profitable. The fourth thing is that we need to make sure that we enable the company, and not just, some folks really think sales, but actually no. When you're launching an important product, the whole company is launching. If the CEO is not sending a blog or writing a message about the product, if you have your leadership team that can't talk about the product in meetings when they get bumped into a Starbucks or a coffee shop, you've done something wrong. The whole company is launching. This is a massive launch. And also it's a sequence. It's not the launch event, it's launch momentum across a pre-launch, a launch, and a after-launch sequence. And last but not least is to monitor performance and get feedback to make adjustments along the way. And so key takeaways from this presentation is to, one, understand the strategic weight of launch strategy. Second is to be aware of the top go-to-market mistakes I've seen multiple companies make, working out in Silicon Valley, working out here in Europe, in EMEA, large organizations like Dell, like mega large organizations like Dell, large organizations as well like LinkedIn, and startups as well. Right? I've worked across a different variety of companies. And so you definitely want to share some of those mistakes and then learn 10 steps to really go from product launch to product revenue. And of course, real world examples and resources later on that you can leverage. And of course, feel free to always reach out to me. Always happy to have an e-coffee or in-person coffee, or just share anything that I can do to help. So why am I presenting this topic? Well, I basically am a SaaS-based business as well, similar to all of you. We're really focused on HR and payroll. The business has been growing incredibly fast across all of Europe. We're based in Paris. And honestly, it's been just hyper growth since I joined. It's just been catapulting. So over 5,000, close to 6,000 actually now customers across Europe, over 100,000 users across five countries. Over 180 million euros raised. And so getting launches right became my number one priority across the board. Just to get alignment as well and to make sure we get it right. And so this presentation is really done for products, heads of product marketing, the marketer who's also on the ground that's going to be at close range launching this thing, the cross-functional partners as well that work. And this kind of information can be really good as well for product market fit, high growth, or declining sales. I do want to say a couple of things is that honestly, take what you need, throw away the rest. Because every situation is different, the market, the industry you're in. So I can't guarantee that everything's going to fit exactly well to your situation, but I can promise that you're going to learn quite a few interesting things that you can then take back to your business, iterate, and see some improvements along the way. Last thing before I get started is that take your time. Rome wasn't built in a day. You literally will have to test and iterate to get it right so that you can move from product launches to predictable revenue. So here we are. I'll go through this slide pretty quickly. Is the top 10, or I should say the top mistakes I've seen go-to-market businesses make. Number one, wrong product, solve the wrong need, right? You're building a nice to have instead of a must have. That's it. If you fail there, you're just not going to generate sales. It just has to be a must have if you want to scale, if you want to drive adoption. Poor resource allocation. So not enough media budget, ads, inbound, outbound. There's just not enough media budget to really scale the message. You don't have the right team around the table to make this successful, and potentially you haven't invested enough time in creating a great product. Third is there's no specific launch goal or KPI target. Is there a specific, is this a $1 million, a dollar launch? Is this a $10 million launch? Is it $100 million? What kind of launch is this? Who is this for? The other mistake is that it's an event instead of a sequence launch strategy with a pre-launch, launch, and post. It's like just launch and then that's it. There's no kind of follow-up. There's no like adoption campaign. There's no feedback loop. The other one is that there's no business plan. So if you have a specific target, well, how many leads is it going to generate? Do you need to generate? And how many leads are going to have to convert to demos? And how many demos convert to customers? How much revenue are we talking about? What kind of segments? All that information, you actually need to kind of chart it out and just get an idea, especially if you've launched before and you kind of have some numbers. This is just really important because it gives you something to kind of compare when you're monitoring performance. The other thing is poor pricing strategy. I think pricing is a very complex topic, and I have a whole other presentation. I'm just kind of an hour and a half diving into pricing strategy, but pricing strategy can really help you accelerate growth. But if you do it well, it's growth without profitability. Sometimes you can be profitable, but not a lot of traction, and sometimes you don't have any of those. And so pricing strategy is important. And the other thing is wrong segmentation. And here I put really assets versus liabilities, because there's a difference between a customer who's a good customer who buys fast, buys quickly, is happy, stays longer, refers other people. And there's another type of customer who's a pain in the butt, puts tickets all the time, drives your customer success team nuts, and at the end gives you a bad NPS and leaves anyway. So you really have to understand who you want to get after and the difference between an asset customer or a liability customer. Another one is cross-functional buying. Sometimes, especially being in product marketing, we have the feeling it's product marketing that launches or marketing that launches, but no, it should be like the whole business is launching, especially for the mega launches. You have to have sales, CS, product, marketing in the room, putting together the strategy and launching together. And then there's no risk mitigation plan, which means like, okay, well, if the product fails, F's up, what do we do? Is there a contingency plan? If sales is not converting, is there a contingency plan? And if the competition counters on pricing, on product, is there just an idea? And it doesn't mean that we need to get into the details, but we need to be high level, just have our eyes on what happens if. And those are great questions because it can also help you build a better product, have a better launch strategy, and have better conversations around the table. And last but not least, there's usually no governance or team, senior governance or team monitoring the ROI of the project. You've launched something. Is it profitable? Are we generating leads? Is that segment profitable? They're not generating too many tickets for CS teams. If it is, why? Do we need to improve the training? Do we need to automate a process? Like all that information, the entire loop is important. Sometimes we're just really focused on launching and not figuring out the rest. So I know that was a lot. So feel free to put in some questions, comments, feedback in the chat box, and we'll get to it. And now I'll shift into the 10 steps that, over time, working on all these different organizations I've worked in, really standing on the shoulders of some amazing launch strategists at LinkedIn, at Dell, now here as well as at Payfit, and a couple other startups as well, like TalkTest and so on, in the Bay Area. I've learned quite a lot, and I've been able to kind of put together a list of steps that I think could be very interesting. Step one is define the pain you want to solve very quickly. So, you'll want to build a hypothesis on what is it that we're actually looking to build and why. You want to validate it with a couple of customers, and you want to make a call. At the end of the day, it's sometimes hard to determine what's going to be the MVP, what should be the product, how much to invest now versus later. Should it have this feature or should that be saved for later on? And it's hard. At the end, you do have to make a call and determine, okay, what are we going to solve for? You have to build it and launch it. The second thing is that you have to assemble the right team. In most discussions, you have to have product, you have to have marketing, sales, customer success, and ops. I call them black belt ops because they're just, for me, they're my right-hand partners for everything. for pricing strategies because they understand the differences in terms of, so here we're talking about sales ops, biz ops, customer ops, product ops, I mean, anyone on the ops side. And the reason is because they can help with understanding the numbers if a product is profitable. They can also help with the right pricing strategy as well, understanding how much it's costing us to operate the business. And so there's so much data that marketing doesn't necessarily have. I need to have my finance counterpart, my biz ops counterpart, my sales ops counterpart to make sure that we're going in the right direction and we're doing the right things. Of course, this can include legal, finance, any other groups that you would need around the table, but just identify them and do them and bring them in the group. The couple tips here is determine who needs to be part of the conversation. Definitely schedule a meeting beforehand with the different folks so you can share the vision and you can make sure everyone's aligned. And then you also know if there's any kind of objections before you get into the room with everyone. Make sure you ask for resources and commitment. Like I will specifically say, hey, sales, this definitely needs to be a sales play for the next 2 quarters. Here's why. Here's what we need from you. Maybe we'll need like 2 or 3, 5 SDRs focused on outbound. Maybe we'll need, a couple AEs to be doing XYZ. You have to be very specific and people need to commit on the initiative. And then 4th is assemble the right, align on the right objective. And then 5th is to draft the plan. Now, I'll go a little bit faster because you'll have the slides. But 3 is determine the goal and the type of launch. So we have kind of like, the epic launch, major launch, minor launches. Is this a 100K launch, 1 million launch, 10 million launch? What are we trying to do here? Because not all launches are created equal and not all launches should have the same amount of resources allocated to it. The 4th thing is to build the minimum profitable product. Now, I know this is kind of weird because typically you're like MVP and so on, but honestly, for me, it's like, what is the minimum product that we can build that can be profitable? Why? Well, because we built something that is a must-have. We have the right pricing strategy and growth strategy to get to the market, and we're also going to get there quite fast so that we can recoup quite quickly in terms of our payback and so on. So from design, I'm trying to build something that is going to be profitable, of course, meet the needs of the customers, of course, solve a real pain and so on. But I'm already thinking by design of something that needs to work for the right reasons. 5th is build a business plan, like literally crunch down the numbers, how many leads, how many demos based on our pricing strategy, our traction channels, are we doing inbound, outbound partnerships, payback, what do we need to expect here? Because I'm going to be investing in media right now. How long do we expect to recoup it? Am I going for growth? Or am I going for profitability? Am I going for both? You got to have that kind of alignment. It doesn't need to be a 100-page document. It could be literally a 1-pager with your key points, and that's your document. That's your Bible or your document of source of truth for the for the launch. The other thing is you want to also define, are we going for growth and profitability? And I mentioned that because growth only could be acquiring customers potentially at a profitability decreases with more customers, hence Sony, not sustainable, or profitable, which is meaning acquiring more customers with positive margins, which means profitability as well increases with more customers, which is sustainable. And so there's an example of growing but not profitable, profitable but not growing, and profitable and growing. And obviously that's the holy grail, and that's where you want to be. Couple things on pricing as I move over to some of the other steps is pricing is, there's a lot to it, but to boil it down, there's 3 things you have to pay attention to. One is going to be the actual pricing model, the dynamic, fixed pricing, user fee per month, so on. The other thing is going to be pricing unit. What's the actual dollar number? 49 euros plus base price per user per month, whatever it is. And what's the upsell strategy for customers for add-ons and so on, and also scale as well. So these are 3 different pieces of the pricing strategy that you have to get well, and you have to iterate with your team. And at the end, you kind of have an outcome of potentially free, standard, plus, enterprise, and so on. And you have your list and you have your upsell strategy, and you're good to go. Then there's also, we literally sit down and this is literally a screenshot where you forecast revenue, how many, on the new acquisition side, on the upsell side, how much traction do we expect to get? Because we can come back to this and then monitor the impact and determine if we need to make any changes. 6 is build the risk mitigation plan. What if product performance fails? What do we do? Is there a specific contingency plan? What if sales doesn't convert? Is there a contingency plan? What if the competition counters pretty aggressively as well? Is there a specific idea, right? And the point here is not to go into too much of the details, like I mentioned, but to have a high-level strategy so that if that happens, right away you can pull out that card with the different points, and you can dive into something a lot more detailed for that situation. 7, of course, build all your launch assets, anything you're going to be doing in the market. 8, you want to train your sales teams, you want to train your customer success team. And one of the things that I always want to make sure we do is train also just your regular employee in the business. You want to share the why and the objectives, you want to run the training and share the assets, and you want to create that feedback loop, because anyone in the company can get feedback from a friend who's a customer, from a talk they just gave. So you want to make sure you have that right feedback loop so you can quickly aggregate all that data, quantitative and qualitative, to be successful in reiterating on that launch strategy and that product. 9 is launch in a sequence format. You have your pre-launch, your launch, your post-launch. I'm not going to get into too much detail here because we're almost almost there in 5 minutes. But your pre-launch is really that warm-up. It's building the product. It's getting that iterative feedback. It's using some of those early beta customers to share success stories. Then you have your launch. That's your, that moment where you're at peaked. Everyone is sharing online on social media. You have your campaigns full blast. You have your leadership team that's doing some webinars, doing some talks, some PR. You have that moment, but then you have your post-launch strategy, which is the acceleration of your sales and customer success teams as well, and your employees. I think for me, I always want to make sure that there's literally we use Notion. It's an app where you can put all the information you need. And we put all our assets there. We put our strategy from, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, where we aim to be by the fourth quarter. We have all the assets for everyone, banners, emails. It's a launch. We're going all in, and there's a very important post-launch strategy. And last but not least, we monitor and take notes. This is really where the magic happens, because this is where you're going to know how well you're doing, how to adjust, and how to really crack that code to become someone that can predict revenue based on launches. So I'll share a couple of things. We have this launch steering committee. We had it at LinkedIn. We had it at other previous companies. We have it here at PayFit. And it's that launch steering committee where we all sit down, we review the performance of our launches. We determine if we need to reallocate resources, if we need to up our game on the project, and so on. We have also sponsors, launch leaders. We have a specific outline of a view with a scorecard for our launch exec sponsors and our launch teams to get together every 2 weeks and monitor their performance on a team health, product development, monetization strategy, marketing campaigns. I mean, you need that level of being on the ground and having your view, especially if you're VP of marketing, you're head of marketing. You have to make sure that the system's put in place, because or else you spend too much time trying to collect the information. And so all of this is just kind of examples of different things we put in place, Slack channels with specific details, so that at the end we can have a snapshot of tier 1 launches, tier 2 launches, where we're doing, how are we doing, who's a sponsor, who's a launch lead, how are we doing on the due date. And then you have, of course, the top 10. I have them all here laid out, so you can see it. Like I mentioned, there's a lot here, but I fundamentally believe that if you could get to this level of being able to iterate and devise a plan, then you'll be able to get much, much closer to cracking the code for predicting the performance of a launch, iterating whenever you need to be able to go for growth or go for profitability. But I honestly believe that doing this over and over again every quarter, sitting down, figuring out what we need to improve, and going through these top 10 steps will give you what you need to have a much profitable and predictable revenue experience for launches. So there you go. We have about a couple minutes. I don't want to go into too much more detail, but you'll have the slide. There's a ton of great stuff in here for you. Some resources so you can have in books, articles, podcasts. Feel free to do that. And there you go. Feel free to add me as well on LinkedIn, and happy to chat with everyone who needs to. So I'll stop sharing there, and I'll look at some of the questions. Pete, how are you?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's Pep.
So,
No worries, mate. All right, let's pick a couple of questions here. So, what if you're a startup that has no numbers yet? How do you create a data-driven business plan to take customers through that funnel from leads to demos to customers?
Yeah, that's a great one. I mean, I think
yeah,
that's a great one. I think first of all, it's good to leverage your network. So there's a lot of companies who are in similar industries as you, who have similar models, who have done this kind of experience before. I use LinkedIn all the time. Go find out a company who's already done it. Figure out what they're doing right now, how things are working. Honestly, a lot of people are open to sharing. So that just gives you a bit of an understanding from companies who've already done it, who are ahead of you, not companies who have not done it. Companies that have done it, that gives you a bit of an understanding of benchmark. And then, of course, you have to test and iterate. So, okay, well, based on the benchmark for the certain product or certain industry, certain customer segment, here's what the market says. Let's see how we're doing. Let's run a benchmark based on that and our performance. That'd be the easiest thing, because anything else you would do would be just, you're just guessing at that point.
Mm-hmm. I'll say, well, last question. The difference between feature product launches versus full product launches. So how do you go?
Yeah.
How do you go about those?
Yeah, that's a great one. And that's the reason why we created a tiering system where we have epic launches, which is like a whole new business line, a whole new product line, opening up a whole new market. We have major launches, which is basically a new, a major improvement to our product suite. And then we just kind of have adoption feature launches. And the resourcing is just not the same. For an epic, we have like an exec sponsor, we have a launch team, we have a certain amount of resources allocated, media budget, and a high target as well. For the major, it's usually a lot less, maybe not an exec sponsor, but maybe not as many resources around the table. And then for the minor or just a feature launch, which is not revenue generating and more adoption generating, a little bit less resources and maybe more focus on the customer success team and some automation within the product as well to scale. But yes, I'll send you the slides so you can see it. Obviously, it's not in a lot of details, but that gives you a bit of a framework of how we allocate resources.
Awesome. Yannick, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me as well.